Hello, Artful Kids. This is your teacher, Mrs. James Sharp. I'm going to talk today about some painting techniques and routine or procedures, how we use some of these paints. So we've got, these are tempera block paints and watercolors. And they're both in a palette. This is called a palette that they sit in. And so we're just going to go through how to kind of use these. So you've got different sizes of brush, and usually when I give you a project, I'm going to give you kind of a choice of different sizes of brush. So if you want to paint a big area, a big section, then you would use a bigger brush that would cover more space. And if you have smaller detailed areas, then you would use smaller brushes to paint those smaller detailed areas. Okay, so those are the kind of brushes we've got in our classroom. All right, so I'm just going to start with kind of this size. Now you get lots of water, so with these paints, these are already wet because we were using them earlier. These are brand new. I've just opened these. Look how nice these look. So anyway, you need to start with a nice wet brush, and with both of these, more water, less paint is kind of the rule. All right, because a little paint goes a long way. So I'm going to start with these. My brush is nice and wet. I'm going to start with a blue. Now I don't need to rub a lot of paint on there because, just like I said, a little paint goes a long way. So depending on how you want it, if you like it kind of light color like that, then you would use more water. If you need darker color, then you get a bit more paint on there and less water. See how much darker that is than that? So it depends on what you're going after. If you want a lighter color, more water. Darker color, less water. Okay? All right, and then if you're still using, if you're sticking with one color, if I'm painting something and I'm using this color, you can keep going, and then if it starts getting dry, now my brush is pretty wet, so here, let me try to get an example of dry. So if you're painting and it's starting to get dry like that, now start by just dipping it in. Now you don't need to rinse this whole brush out if you're using the same color. You just need to dip it to get a bit more paint on, or to get a bit more water on, and then that will make your paint come to life again. All right? Now, if you're changing color, that's when you need to rinse your brush out. You don't rinse your brush if you're using the same color. You just dab a little bit to get your brush wet again, but you don't need to rinse it. I see a lot of kids rinsing out, then getting back into the same color, and that's kind of wasting the paint that's already on your brush. All right, so now I'm going to switch colors. So now I want to rinse that out really well. And we never tap like that because that spreads water everywhere. Rinse and then rub if you want to get less water on your brush. Okay, so let me try a different brush now. Let me try a smaller brush now. All right, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to use, well, maybe this pink. All right, so let's see how we go. See how that is? I've got, oh, that's nice. All right, so I'm gonna paint for a little bit. All right, I need it darker again. I'm gonna add a bit more paint. Now I don't need to, I'm not dipping it in now because I don't need any more now. All right, so I'm still painting. Now if it starts getting really dry, then you might need to dip it in there again to get more. All right, and that's a really nice color, and so you're gonna keep going with that. All right, now it's starting to get, all right, then I wanna add a bit more. If that's too dry, then I might add a bit more water, just a little bit. See how I just tapped it in there? I just tapped it in there. All right, now I want to switch colors. Now I rinse my brush. Rinse it completely. All right, there we go. Now I can switch colors, all right, without mixing. There we go. All right, now that's a really important thing, is that when you're going from one color to another, you've got to rinse your brush. I don't want people mixing colors in the palettes. I see that a lot. So if you go in here and then you go in here, what happens there? then that turns into a darker color. Now, if you like that color, if you want to get to that color, you mix the colors on your paper, not on the palette, because that ruins it for everyone else. All right, so I'll just clean that out. Now I might need, if that happens, what I'll do is I'll just rinse that off in the sink. So if somebody's mixing the colors, you let me know and I'll go rinse them. All right, so we don't mix them in the palette, but we mix them here. So let me show you an example of that. So maybe I want some blue, then maybe I want some red on top of that. All right, there we go. So you're mixing it on your paper, not in the palette, not ruining it for other people. Okay? All right, I think that's all I need to say about that. So let me think, is there anything else? Oh, let me just show you. Yes, let me just show you a few others. So here's the fatter brush. So I'm just gonna show you what that looks like. Now, if you're covering large amounts of area, this is a good brush to use. All right, lighter, if you want it darker, you use less water and a bit more paint, and you get it darker. Okay, if you want it lighter, add a little bit of water, and you can make it with watercolors and these, you can make it really watery. And it dries with little puddles, and sometimes that looks really interesting. So I kind of like it when it's really watery sometimes, especially with these watercolors. Okay? All right, so I hope I've cleared up some painting routines a little bit with you. Let's just do a little bit of small brush. Here's a smaller one. Ooh, look at that. So the different sizes of brush. See how that's getting dry? If I just add a little bit more water, look how that livens it up. There we go. Okay. All right, have a great time painting.